it may not be a roll of the dice. This may be his plan.
Is he playing three-dimensional chess, or is
He's
or is he?
He may have you in checkmate on 2 different levels that you don't even understand.
No,
I don't know which one of those is more my nightmare of whether he's Lex Luthor playing three-dimensional chess on a level we don't understand and it's all part of like a grand master plan, or if he's just Mr. Magoo bumbling through having to solve the mystery.
Hello there. Welcome to another episode of the Exchanges podcast. I know it's been a while, guys. I'm sorry. I've been busy. Been out here juggling a lot of projects and doing a lot of things. I have multiple podcasts in the queue. I've been recording like crazy, and don't let your heart be worried. We're back here on the grind, and I hope to go ahead and crank out some of these episodes I have sitting here in the queue. I know that the news cycle happens fast and current events are changing all the time, but still, there are some topics out there that are just universal. So a lot of the podcasts I have in the queue here aren't really dated or anything at all. I mean, we're all still dealing with the ramifications of, let's just say, this political environment. Anyway, let me go ahead and thank Dan, David, and Shawn for participating in this podcast episode. And I always mess this up. If you don't know, because you don't go ahead and check the name of the podcast and whatnot you listen to, this is called the Exchanges Podcast. It is a podcast dedicated to bringing people together from all different walks of life to go ahead and discuss the issues of our time. You can go ahead and find us at www.theexchangespodcast.com, and you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, Stitcher, and soon you'll go ahead and find us on Spotify. We have multiple podcasts in the queue, ones we've recorded in the past, and all of them are interesting and awesome conversations, just like the one you're about to go and listen to right now. Let's see, what do we go ahead and talk about in this podcast? We talked about foreign interventionism and how the American public seems still, hung over from the days of Iraq. Speaking of Iraq, we go ahead and get a bit nostalgic and talk about the feelings of the nation during that time. We even dive into talking about MySpace. Speaking of MySpace and social media, we talk about our boy, Mark Zuckerberg, and also we talk about the infamous or famous, depending upon your perspective, Donald Trump and what he's been up to as of lately. We talk about corporations and power and how they go ahead and govern kind of social trends within society. What else we talk about? We talk about Black Mirror. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. There's 4 seasons out now on Netflix. Go ahead, take an hour or two, watch a few episodes, you'll be hooked. Guarantee it. What else did we talk about? We talked about a bunch of shit. I can't remember half of the time, but I know that all of it is freaking good. And it's so hard to go ahead and cut these episodes down because I want everything in there. Also talked about the ongoing investigation that special prosecutor or investigator Mueller is heading. Per usual, I can't go ahead and tell you everything we talk about because there's just so much here. But go ahead and strap in. If you're going ahead and driving in your car, turn up your radio a little bit. If you're cooking or painting or doing whatever, just go ahead and get ready for a great podcast coming up here. And I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. I'll see you guys on the tail end.
They don't want to be caught munching away on microphones.
Actually, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's like even the music in the background and stuff is not that bad. It's only bad when there's like a dance song because you get the and you can't edit that out. It's just like But like people eating and stuff like that, you don't hear it, and I can go ahead and use Magic.
Back when I used to do recordings, air conditioning was more of a pain in the butt than most conversations.
Yeah, there is like a monotonous drown in the background here, but that's easily, you can target that and edit that out, so it disappears.
They'll never run back in the old reel-to-reel days.
But
you've done that a couple times, it's fine.
Yeah.
I was going to say something about MySpace.
Well, I can't buy it, honestly, I promise. Yeah, I have no experience with MySpace. How does it differ from...
It was the original, like, Facebook.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it was literally the same exact concept, except less polished. I don't think it had, like, a robust advertising model behind it that that Facebook obviously has now. I don't remember if you had to purchase or like sign up for like an executive account. Okay.
As far as I remember, it was free.
It
It was
was
definitely my peer group. I was just like too much of a nerd without friends to like have a MySpace. Like I wasn't cool enough. And then by the time I was, MySpace was over and Facebook had started. Right.
Yeah.
No, as far as I remember, it was free.
Yeah.
I don't remember any.
So I mean, like this was back when I first was going to college. It was big and everything, and you know, me being part of college kids and everything, and you take all these crazy photos and stuff, right?
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
again, thank goodness I
yeah.
predated that.
So, you know, occasionally I went to MySpace one time, a long time ago. I was like, this is still here. Let me put in my name and search. All my information is gone, but all my photos are still there. I'm like, what the hell? So I'm like trying to figure out, like, how do I get rid of this? And of course, I don't have any login, you know. And I'm like trying to look around and trying to figure out like a way to request to delete it. You can't.
No.
It's just there. And I think who bought MySpace? A big somebody bought MySpace.
Oh, so
I guess we can go ahead and Google it.
Yep, I'm on it.
Yeah.
Does it still exist?
Yeah. It still exists, but the original owner doesn't own it anymore. Some larger company bought MySpace in hopes of turning it into something like Facebook, but they just sat on it and never did anything with it. So it's owned by some huge conglomeration or some big company, and it's just in their graveyard. And I imagine they're just holding onto the rights of the name and stuff. And I imagine they still scalp like a bunch of data from people off of MySpace, all those accounts, because millions of people are using it.
Oh, yeah.
And so I imagine
sell that data lots of places.
Yeah. So it's still valuable for them to hold on to it, but they just don't do anything with it.
News Corp.
News Corp did.
2005? Yeah, for $35 million.
$35 million.
Well, I hope that bottle of Beamer.
Somebody got a helicopter, you know? Somebody got a jet.
Although on one hand, I admire them. I mean.
I am wrong. I apologize. News Corp bought it in 2005 for $580 million and then sold it in 2011 for $35 million.
Look at that loss. Oh my God.
Boy, write that one down.
Ooh.
Boy, well, on the bright side, think of Trump. They probably won't have to pay taxes for 10 years or more.
Right, yeah, that workaround.
Well, yeah, remember the Panama Papers? Yeah. You notice how there's never that big of a splash here in the United States?
No, yeah, but I remember vividly, like other countries, definitely Russia and whatnot was very upset
why
about
it wasn't
that.
a splash
Why?
here? Because all the crap that was such a scandal overseas is actually legal here. Rich people can buy their money whatever they want.
Yeah.
So that's why it was sort of a yawn here. You want an offshore account to hide your excess campaign contribution?
Yeah. And I remember, I want to say, was it maybe France or Spain or something like that? I remember hearing reports coming out of there that people were like, well, congressmen and women were visibly upset about those Panama Papers. And obviously, their offshore laws and stuff were a lot more strict, I guess.
Well, remember, that's the rumor explanation as to why Putin got so upset with Hillary and Obama.
Yeah.
Because he thought that the Panama Papers were actually a CIA covert run. Because a lot of his associates got burned with that. And that's the completely unproven and unprovable, speculation as to why he got such a bug up his ass and decided to toss a couple of $1 million over to that internet research group folk.
Cambridge Analytica. Is that what you're talking about, right?
The trolls.
All the trolls. Oh no, it's the Internet Research Agency. That's the name of it.
Right.
That they were definitely after.
Whether that's true, I have no idea. But since the world runs on rumors, sure sounds plausible. Because apparently a lot of terabytes of information got dumped on a lot of Russian oligarchs.
You know what though? I do miss the certainty of like a consistent narrative in society. It's like now it's like, we're all like, this happened, but who knows? Let me put it out there.
Yeah.
You never know. It may all be bullshit. Any given moment, it can all be bullshit. A friend of mine on social media shared this image of what supposedly is supposed to be the Syrian bombings, right? And it shows a side-by-side picture of like some YouTube video of Croatia being bombed, and then right next to it, MSNBC in like a news frame, that same thing.
Yeah.
So the tweet is like, you guys went ahead and took, this video from YouTube that happened like 10 years ago, and you ran it on MSNBC.
Yeah.
And I looked at that and I was like, well, wait a minute. It's easy as hell to go ahead and take that picture from that YouTube and just put a news frame around it and crop it and come up with that tweet.
Anything you want,
Yeah. So it's like,
especially
damned
tweets.
damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's like you never know, right? It's like you...
I like the rule of thumb when it comes to how to tell the difference between history and historical fiction is whenever you see the phrase he thought or he felt or its variations, you're reading fiction. Yeah, and when you say Vladimir Putin was outraged at the revelation of the Panama Papers, it's really speculative.
Definitely.
But if you can say Vladimir Putin did, well, then you can cite your source. I mean, did Vladimir Putin throw $2 million at the Internet Research Group? Possibly. Where's your evidence?
Yeah.
Because that can have evidence.
That's true.
And unless you can get Putin to actually come online and say, yep, that was on my mind, you'll never know.
Yeah, we'll never know.
No.
I mean, it's definitely not, Russian politics to ever admit, to definitively to anything.
Well, also
right?
just questions of intent. To leap to way more than 180 degrees to another topic. That's the problem with criminal law in general.
Mm-hmm.
Is trying to figure out, at least American criminal law, I could shoot you right here. But if I didn't intend to do it, if I didn't intend to commit a crime, it's not a crime. Aussie Burger?
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Yes, sir.
I was the only person in my law school class who was suicidal enough to argue that maybe intent should be dropped from the guilt or innocence phase of the trial and added back onto the remedies side.
Yeah.
Because a lot easier to prove what you did. Yeah, I pulled out a gun, I shot you. Boom, crime. Why I did it might factor in to whether I go to prison, whether I go to insane asylum.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's murder or manslaughter.
Yeah, right.
It reminds me of that case of that this woman. I think they were teenagers. It was like a teenage couple. Some guy, teenage boy, ended up killing himself.
Yeah.
And the case was that he was texting with this girlfriend of his, or maybe they were together, then they broke up, but they were still communicating via text. And she obviously had some type of manipulation thing going on with this younger guy, and he was obviously depressed. But she texted to him like, well, why don't you go ahead and kill yourself then? You're complaining to me about all these issues and whatnot. Have you did it yet? Did you kill yourself yet? While you're still here? Maybe you should do it this way. Maybe you should do it that way. You remember that case?
Yeah, this was what,
about it, yeah.
2015, 2016?
Yeah.
Wisconsin, they were like high school aged.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were like screenshots of the text where she was like encouraging him, don't chicken out, this is what you want.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah, so her defense lawyer was like, well, obviously she didn't kill that guy.
Right.
Who's, can she be convicted for like even a manslaughter on that for just texting somebody?
I think
For
she
just
was.
advocating.
She was.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
She went to jail.
Well, did they? She didn't appeal? She actually...
Well, yeah, I mean,
No, she got some jail time.
nobody covers appeals, right? Like,
Well, I guess.
Yeah, right.
like
Well,
you're lucky if you get a news source to follow up like 6 months, 8 months down the road when the course
Yeah,
right. It
when
just
the
suited
case
them.
actually goes
Yeah,
to trial.
the $5 billion award from Exxon or something.
Yeah,
It on appeal gets reduced down to 100,000.
exactly. Or they're tied up in court for a decade.
But they made her serve while pending appeal. Then
Yeah.
that is curious.
So it's like, what you were saying. It's like, it's clear cut case. Somebody goes ahead and points a gun, shoot, and kill somebody. But when you get into muddy cases like this, which is even still tied to social media, or this new generation of like being able to contact and talk with people and stuff like that, and having evidence of somebody telling another person who's obviously mentally ill, hey, go kill yourself. What do you do with that? How do you remedy that? Is she still criminally liable to the fact that where she should be in jail? Or like manslaughter?
Well,
I don't
there is
know.
or is it a different crime?
felony murder.
Yeah. Are we coming to a whole new genre of like, or classification of crime?
I don't know that felony murder would apply.
No.
Well, there is that doctrine from the felony murder line of cases. Felony murder is basically where if you're committing a felony and a death happens, even if you didn't intend it.
Right.
Well, you shouldn't have been doing that in the first place, right? You're committing a felony. You're still a murderer. And the case that was the law school exemplar of it is the burglar.
Yeah.
He breaks into the house, thought it was an empty house. Turned out the guy was just asleep. He wakes up, surprises the burglar. Burglar conks him on the head, crushes his skull. And autopsy revealed that the guy had an unusually thin skull.
Yeah.
And he said, well, how could I have possibly predicted that I would happen to have a victim with a thin skull, right? I said, sorry, you take your victims as you find them. You know? Now, like, if this girl had been texting stuff to me, like, go kill yourself. Right?
Yeah, whatever.
I'd play with her for weeks. But she took her victim as she found it. But the question is, did she commit a crime in the first place?
It's the whole case of... Well, it's the whole thing of, like, they always go ahead and, you hear about it. What's the name of that show where dude goes to house, sets up the house like some, like, very young preteen is, like, calling some dude, and they lure, like, creepy, potentially pedophile-ish dudes to the house. Chris Hansen. Remember that show? What was the name of that show?
Really? They lured pedophiles?
I think maybe it was a Dateline episode. Yeah. It was on, like, CNN or something. It'll be pretty much, an entrapment type of deal where they would kind of, honey trap and bait dudes who like little kids or
to catch a predator.
To catch a predator, teenage girls or something, and then through the text and whatnot, they would actually show up to the house, and then Chris Hansen would be sitting there and be like, "Hey, what's up? So, what were you coming here to do tonight?" And obviously the guys would be like, the guys would be like, "What what is going on?" Yeah. And so in cases like that, obviously you can still be locked up for a crime, regardless of, those dudes never got to the point of sleeping with women, but it was demonstrated through texting and communication that there was some intent.
You can, if you want to do some legal research.
Nah, I'm good.
Well, no, the line between entrapment and a righteous catch, that is true. That's a real weird line. That's a real
Anyway, let's go ahead and I don't know when David and whatnot will show up. Usually they do. Maybe they lied this time. And if they lied, I know they listen to this podcast. So you guys are liars.
We just pretend they're here and really quiet.
I know, right? We're in this weird era where Americans are exhausted from, going overseas, foreign interventionism. After the classic disastrous, Iraq war, it's like we've been in this hangover state from doing that type of thing forever. Yeah. It feels like. It seems like every time a president, whether it was Obama, whether it's even Trump now, says we're going to go bomb this country for doing some type of atrocity, the population just groans. It's like, And is there a case, though, for foreign interventionism? Because I feel like the theory out there is that we are already out there in the world. We have more bases than any other nation around the globe, kind of, quote unquote, policing the world. I think the theory is if we back away from our presence, there will be a power vacuum, and there'll be other actors who will go ahead and replace us.
Sure.
So, we're arguably seeing it already.
Yeah. So the theory is we have to be out there going ahead and setting some type of ideological standard for the globe. So we can't just go ahead and shrug our shoulders and be like, hey, Syria, you're gassing your own population. That sucks, but,
that's your business.
That's your business, not our business.
Well, I think you run into a couple things, right? Our modern policy of interventionism really stems from a reaction to World War II, right? And World War I, where America was very much like, that's on the other side of the Atlantic. We don't have to worry about that until until it wasn't on the other side of the ocean.
Exactly.
And then since then, we have escalated into this world police. Now, whether or not that's good or bad, you get situations like Rwanda in the 90s, where how can we, as a world power, not step in to stop something as egregious as genocide?
Yeah.
But you also have the argument of, well, if they're independent states, if they're independent countries, how dare we step in to their own internal conflicts? Probably one that's not as egregious as...
Hey, what's up, man? I was just talking crap about you for not being here on the podcast.
Without my wife to regulate my time schedule, you know.
I feel you.
I remember you from a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it's been a month
how are
ago.
you?
Good to see you again.
Long time
Good
no
to
see. How
see
you been,
you.
man?
I've been
Shawn.
great.
Yes,
I'm
Shawn.
Dave. It's a pleasure,
Nice
Shawn.
to meet you.
We were just talking about foreign interventionism, so
Yeah.
go ahead and
Foreign
hop in this.
intervention.
Yeah,
Right,
it's
so in the context of...
a justification for the United States, or a power going into the world and setting some type of global ideological standard, because there may be a power vacuum or some type of other worse entity that would step into place. So is there a justification for us going to a place like Syria? And Shawn was bringing up the case of like not stepping into the Rwanda situation.
Right. Or not stepping in effectively or quickly enough.
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to, there's slippery slope arguments on both sides. And it either leads to intervene always or intervene never. And neither one of those, and like people want to take it to those extremes, and I don't think either one of them is probably the correct answer.
Yeah.
But
Define correct. Correct.
I don't know that I can
correct by
define.
what standard?
Exactly.
Well,
yeah.
so I can define correct, and I actually think the United States has the correct definition, and that is we have to look out for our interests. We have to, our first priority as the United States is to make sure the United States maintains itself and is able to grow and is able to take care of its own people. To that end...
Well, but now to flip it, is that a definition that was so expansive that it lost its meaning? Is there any place in the world where we don't have interests?
Yes, there are plenty. I mean,
Where?
there are plenty of parts of Africa which we could care less. They don't have good resources.
No?
We're not willing to intervene. It'd be too expensive for us to go. I'd order part of the Middle East is actually starting to become that way, especially as oil has become more valuable. I mean, in the past, we would have had to go on much further into Syria because we needed oil. Now that we've got, shilling and can get our own oil, and now that oil isn't as needed in our society, Middle East is starting to cross that path where it's not going to be worth it to us to go there. Now, what we are scared about, and what we wisely did, was take out the weapon refineries, because we don't want other countries to have chemical weapons. And that is very much in our interest and in our defense, but otherwise, I mean, we don't, aside from the fact that Russia and China seem to like him, we don't care that much about Assad, we don't care that much about Syria.
Yeah, I agree. So you don't think that, you think it's all pretty much bullshit, the whole argument of like there's some absolute like moral goal that the United States is going towards and intervening in these countries. It's really just the only correct answer is like what's in the interest of the United States.
Yes.
Right?
If we can define what that is. But
Well,
that's a good point. This is sort of the progeny of Westphalia. We have these nation states that supposedly own everything within their geographical borders. It's what I privately consider the Hitler doctrine. If he had just stayed in his own borders, he could have killed and raped and maimed as long as he wanted. Who would care, right? No, but since Westphalia, I think the first time I remember it being articulated post-Nuremberg was the breakup of Yugoslavia, where we're basically saying, hey, my God, they're raping and killing and maiming all these innocent people, preferably white people. So, can we allow that? In other words, the whole notion of human rights as being independent. Remember, it used to be, if you were in the borders of a nation, they owned you.
Right.
You know what I just thought of is that like so like oxymoronic and like hypocritical, at least of maybe this current administration. At least now, given Donald Trump says anything, right? But at least maybe through the perspective or the lens of his administration enacting foreign policy, is that maybe his constituents, maybe people who support him, the Alex Jones types, are super upset about the idea of us going over to Syria and doing something, right? Intervening in that foreign area. But those same type of people are perfectly comfortable maybe with the idea of mandating Mexico to pay for a border wall, right?
Right.
Isn't that like nuts? Isn't that crazy? Now maybe that's all just like conjecture and like just people yammering on social media, and it's like a partisan.
Well, although those two are actually more consistent than they usually get. There's a we don't care about the Syrians, and there's a we don't care about all those those Latinos trying to come up to save their children. We don't care about them either.
It's like the idea of like
the Fortress America idea.
Yeah, Fortress America, but it's this whole idea of like I think our oceans, around the nation is really like has influenced our foreign policy forever. We're not like Germany or France, right? Obviously, where we are right there in the thicket, right next door to a lot of these hotspots, and we have to constantly be paying attention. But we do have a neighboring country, being Mexico, that what happens there does affect what happens in the United States in some instance. Their economy suffers. People migrate over to the United States in order to go ahead and make money.
The same thing in Guatemala and Nicaragua. Yeah.
So it's all like, it's all perspective from exactly where you're at. I don't think there's any true isolationism,
No. We're looking out for our best interests.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the wall's kind of a unnecessary physical representation of that, but that's kind of what they're going for. Is America First is a good example of what... I mean, Trump says it and people get mad at him for it, but that's what's been practiced by every Democratic and Republican president. I mean,
think so?
But is it based on reality?
Yes.
Can Americans be truly secure and happy if there are several hundred million starving Russians and Chinese?
Yeah, but we don't have to see them.
I mean, from an honest perspective, I am a truly happy person, and I'm well aware that there are plenty of starving people. We don't even have to go to another country. There are plenty of starving people right here in our country. You almost have to push past that. I mean, I do try to keep some policies, but I wouldn't like to see major tax increases on my side in order to take care of all these people.
I don't know. That's because remember, even if you're safe, what about your kids? Because someday those starving people are going to want what we have.
Yeah. There's no precedence for that. I mean, societies have kept people like the poor masses suppressed, and to get to the level that you can go back to the Middle Ages in most families, and they'll have the same general economic level. I mean, there will be outliers, but they'll have the same general economic outliers. It's not hard to convince the masses to do things that are not in their best interests, and that's what most governments are based on.
Oh yeah, that's certainly true.
I mean, that's definitely true. It can come here is true, especially in the world as it is now and how interconnected we are. 9/11 obviously being the most dramatic instance of that, of decades and decades of U.S. foreign policy and propaganda maybe spun by those nations and by opportunists who are looking to go ahead and take advantage of that stuff coming to our shores, right? And so I can see the argument of like these people are like, we need to be there. Our military needs to be there because if we're not there, they're gonna come here. But is that a slippery slope?
Or just effective? I mean, look at the distribution of rare earth materials.
Yeah,
but very few of them are actually within our borders. So basically, if the Democratic Republic of Congo goes down the toilet, I think the only other source of cobalt is Russia. Is that good? Is that bad?
Let me switch gears here. Do you think Donald Trump really cares about Syria?
No.
Oh no.
You think he sat there in the whatever the room is?
He likes
the danger room.
The danger room from the X-Men. He's an X-Men.
That's what he calls
He's
it.
clearly a mutant.
But I think since people like to go that, I don't think Obama did either. I don't think...
You don't think Obama really cared about his moves when it came to foreign policy?
Well, he cares about his moves, and I do think Trump cares about his moves, too.
I mean, do you think he cared about it in a sense of, like, I'm trying to protect American interests, and I need to make the right move?
Oh, Trump? Yeah.
You think that he cared about American interests?
Yeah, I think
I don't know,
true.
man.
Yeah,
I have a sense that Donald Trump's lens is how is this going to look for me in my administration, not necessarily
America.
Him thinking about like long-term American foreign policy.
But you're saying two sides of the same coin.
Is it?
Somebody may have motivation, maybe, and like we've said before in the past, I've got a brother like this. Somebody who wants everybody to look up to him and praise him. That's not a bad thing to have in a leader. If a leader is looking for the respect of the people and is willing to do the stuff that the people need in order to keep themselves safe and keep themselves secure, that's a kind of a good policy. So regardless of what you think his motives are, he was going for the right thing in protecting our country and getting rid of these chemical weapons. And he listened to a lot of advisors. And that's the reason for one of the very few times he's getting a lot of praise on both sides of the fence.
So it's an interesting perspective on that being a good thing in a leader. I think, and this is my opinion, right? This perspective. I think that Trump cares about what people think about him, but is not and wants to do what makes him popular, as opposed to wants to do what is best for the people.
Okay.
And those are two, like keeping the people happy and keeping the people safe, fed, healthy, are two different things, right? And sometimes they align, and that's very nice. And I think sometimes they don't, right? I think Obama gets a lot of flack from a lot of progressives and liberals for the amount of like drone bombings, right? We heard about drone bombings for 6 years during his 2 terms, and I think that those are complex military decisions that he had to make. That whether or not they made people like him, because they clearly didn't for the majority of his own base, he and his military consultants felt that they were the right move, right? They mitigated risk to our men and women in uniform. They mitigated collateral damage. They did whatever it was that they were supposed to do. Whereas Trump makes policy decisions and he tweets out things like "I'm going to bomb Syria," and then his advisors
they
find
scramble.
out, right? Like that was the 48-hour news cycle after this weekend, which was people going, "I found out when I read the tweet," and I'm his X, Y, and Z strategic advisor. He does things, and like a lot of people looked at it and went, "So his lawyer gets raided and he bombs Syria? And I think I'm not a big conspiracy guy, right? I don't think that every single time there is something that is conveniently distracting from something that is personally problematic for a president or a politician, that it is orchestrated to be that way. Mm-hmm. But when your own staff is going, I had no idea, and there's somebody who definitely should have been in on the loop, right? We're getting all of these reports that Trump, more than any other president, and rather detrimentally, is his own director of communications, his own chief of staff, his own
his own intelligence cabinet.
Yeah, his own cabinet.
So
right?
if you go by his true pattern, though, like yes, he tweets out a lot of things, and what his advisors and what everybody around him has learned. A tweet is his feeling the water. As I've said many times before, he's actually a very intelligent person. And if we agree that his biggest key is to find out whether things are popular, he puts out an idea, throws it out there, figures out like where things are going with it, and if it ends up being a hit, in this case, I mean, his advisors all say, yes, we need to get these chemical things. France and Britain joined in. I mean, there's almost no debate that the bombing of the chemical facilities is a good idea.
Well, although remember, there's actually been no indication that they even slightly diminished his chemical weapons capacity.
Yeah, there were reports out there saying that.
There were
diminished.
There were 3 facilities that were damaged. Considering the number of missiles that were supposed to have hit them, they should have been converted to dust. I mean, when you drop a 500-kilogram bomb on something and then double it by, 17, I think was the number I heard, there ain't nothing left. You don't see walls standing. You don't see a hole. You maybe see a hole with a scorched area around it. You don't see nothing. Yeah. But that being said, didn't touch the laboratories, didn't touch the depots, didn't touch the people who make it. So this is a large industry, which I don't even understand why it exists, but I don't think they actually materially hurt that capacity.
Yeah, really did anything. I don't know. I'm interested in the idea of how much Donald Trump is really at the table and in control of like foreign policy decisions. Is this a person who's sitting there analyzing the facts in, as I originally brought up, in a way of like, how is this going to help American interests? Or is this a person who, like I said originally, is looking at it through a lens of like my personal PR? And David, I hear you. Well, you know, maybe it doesn't really matter, right?
Right.
Because the outcome still is, at least in this case, beneficial. For
and I believe
the United
it's
States.
true. And again, I'll state that while Trump is being used as an example, I believe the same is true of parties and people throughout. I think that's just the nature of parties and presidents to kind of make this selfish interest, try to push their own agenda, get their own group in control. They're two sides of the coin.
Do you think that
just look
Barack
at Mr.
Obama
Bieber.
or George Bush or Bill Clinton had the same interests that Donald Trump has?
Okay, let's go through those. So Bill Clinton was very much a populist, and they actually consider him on the same level. Barack is a little lower, but he is a guy who rose and almost divorced his marriage because his wife didn't want to go through this whole presidency, but he pushed and he wanted that, and he often paraded around and went out against Republicans and tried to make them look like awful people. George Bush, well, he was actually, ironically, the most humble of these groups, and incidentally the worst president of the four, and I include Trump in that list, was very much in his own self-interest. Like, he actually had slips of the tongue where he said he was going to go into war before any of the 9/11 happened and all that stuff. So he clearly had extra interest in trying to go after these weapons of mass destruction, which we later learned just don't exist, of course. So, I think all presidents are selfish. I think it's actually have it out there is actually better because look at the presidents. The best one was the most selfish, Bill Clinton. The worst one was the most humble, Bush.
I mean, I think we have enough like demonstration of personality here at this point to where I don't think that they're that similar on the spectrum where we can say that all this is the same.
Could the difference be information source?
And tact. I mean, he doesn't have tact. The other guys have tact.
Oh, he did. He doesn't even have strategic subtlety. His strategy. He dabbles his strategy out with every tweet.
Yeah.
But where is he? I can't get a clear sense as to where Mr. Trump gets his information from. I get a sense with
Everybody
Clinton
says TV.
or even George W.
Right.
Bush. I mean, he consults with his security advisors. He consults with, quote, experts.
Sure.
People who have spent years studying it. You know, you may disagree with it, but I think Trump seems to actively distrust that.
He seems particularly disinterested in it.
And I mean, he was ran as the insider candidate, so you somewhat expect that of him. But I told you his best known source, and that is to tweet something out, see whether people are for it and think we should go for it, and that's his tweeting is his talking point. And on foreign policy,
Isn't that the worst way to enact foreign policy?
But I think
let me
it's
take
doing
consensus through Twitter.
I think it's doing a damn good job. We've actually got.
But that's not intentional, though. That's this is all a roll of the dice.
That was because I'm looking for someone to tell me the good things that have occurred.
Great. China is now.
No, are we still talking about Syria?
I'm sorry. You'd like to know about Syria? I can stick with Syria.
I wanted to give honor to the topic.
Okay.
Sure,
absolutely.
let's stick with Syria.
Let's stick with Syria. As far as the good things are concerned, we have not gone into direct conflict. The Syrian regime has actually gotten us, we had gotten on Europe's bad side because they have it shocked them hearing the whole America First and somebody saying it so brazenly, even though they probably know that this has been going on for a long time. we've sent a message that we're not scared of Russia and are willing to bomb through, especially with the help of Europe, take out some targets. So at this point, they're going to have to, basically, we've gone all in on if you start chemical bombing over there, your own people, we're able to take you out, and we're not scared of Russia, we're not scared of Iraq, we're not scared of Syria, trying to kind of tell us what not to do if you use chemical weapons in violation of our policy. And so many presidents have not done that. So I think we're actually making a strong stand. What?
So you're saying that previous to this administration, other nations were perceived the United States as afraid?
I think so. I honestly do. So
we literally marched over there and took out an entire nation's government structure, being Saddam Hussein. You're telling me that this is the moment under Trump? That's now the fear's there.
So Saddam Hussein was an ironic learning, and they say that Kim Jong-un actually got empowered by that whole thing because he found out if you listen to the United States and disarm your missiles, that the United States comes and kicks your ass.
Still, though, that's not.
Okay. So, but that's an example of a failed policy. Okay. Beyond that, we've got Kim Jong-un straight denouncing and starting to do tests, despite numerous, denounce. So here's anything with sanctions.
India did the same thing.
All right.
India did the same thing as in Pakistan.
Missile tests.
Yeah. Well, they're nuclear powers.
Sure.
Actually, Israel is too, although to this day they've not admitted it.
Right.
But they've supposedly been nuclear power since Golda Meir. So these are good results.
I believe that thus far Trump's foreign policy has been positive.
I believe that his overall, and this is kind of taking a more meta view, right? His overall decorum in office has degraded the respect that world powers used to have for the president of the United States of America.
What's the end result of that? What have we lost from? Okay, and a lot of people have. Do you think that it's towards the United States or towards Trump?
I think both, right? Because we, as a people, have elected him, have allowed him to stay in office. Not that we have a necessary way to get him out.
Sure.
But look from the outside looking in, he is our leader. We have all unanimously said this,
quote unquote.
Right. And I think that crowdsourcing his decision-making on Twitter and the way in which he comports himself at international meetings, people are just like, how? How do you guys have this guy? I think the international community looked at George W. Bush, President Bush, and was like, wow, this guy...
A little special.
Yeah, he's... right, like, he's definitely...
Sure.
And you know what? I've never had the opportunity to meet him, but I've had some friends who have. And they say that he is genuinely like a nice guy, and one-on-one, like, he really comes off well. And that's great. Maybe he doesn't take the best photo ops or give the best sound bites, but behind closed doors, he's a charming Texan, right? And then we go into Barack Obama, who is very composed, very, comes off great. His public image, as far as his personal decorum, is amazing. And then we, the polar opposite with Donald Trump. And I think that it reflects poorly on all of us.
Don't know how to react to it, but...
Sure.
Well, can I offer a speculation?
Sure.
While the American government is actually the exemplar of democracy. In fact, one might argue that the less government you have, the less democracy you have, because businesses are not democratic at all. But aside from that, the American government is not America. I've been perceiving this Trump administration as basically a business takeover of the American government. I speculate that the whole reason we're getting into trade wars is because Trump, through basically not staffing the State Department, which is America's face, right? By not even staffing them, even saying on TV, I don't like diplomats because they're not me. But after he saw that basically the American government has dropped off the world stage, we don't even have the personnel to turn up at the meetings anymore.
Nikki Haley goes to the UN and starts talking about sanctions and stuff, and then
Trump
goes like, wait a minute.
American business is going gangbusters.
Sure.
I mean, all the reins of, laissez-faire economics boom.
So I completely
So
agree
how does
with
that
you.
affect our world standard? Governments look at us saying, "There's nobody running this show." But when 3M or Alphabet or General Motors turns up, they're probably the only thing that actually passes for continuity in American policy.
You want to hear like my conspiracy? Not even like a full blown conspiracy, but it's to go ahead and like to piggyback off your point here of how there's a government quote unquote, a corporate takeover of politics. Is that the whole gun debate, right? Congress could not get anything done on this issue. But guess who went ahead and acted? Walmart, Dix, right? Bank of America.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like our government is so dysfunctional. It's like the only thing left now are a lot of these corporations and these corporate institutions, and they're the ones like making these decisions of like, okay, well, at least with the power that I have, we're not going to go ahead and sell the gun. We're going to make it harder to get loans or whatever it may be. I just want to go ahead and say that.
Well, I think it'd be great if the current dysfunction of our government could actually cause a next stage evolution in business ethics, which I think is way overdue.
Sure.
Yeah.
As happy as I am about corporations taking the lead on gun control or things like that, I don't think it's an ethical decision, right? It's a business decision.
Are they contradictory?
I don't think they have to be, right?
Do you think Walmart would have lost money if they did not do something?
I think Walmart and those other companies looked at it and went, we do it now, and we're on the right side of history, and we're trendsetters. So even though it might hit our bottom line now, in the long run, we're not going to be the guys getting boycotted. When 2025 rolls around, we can go, no, we've been doing this for 7 years. Right?
And if everything goes the other way and they figure out that people are going there, they quietly do it without the news. They start putting guns.
Although assertion, agree or disagree, are good ethics. Assertion. Good ethics are in the long run good business.
Yeah.
Period.
Disagree.
Okay, please do.
Specifically, that would depend on the consumer, right? In this case, the American buyers, caring about a business's ethics. And I think that while we talk a lot about caring about business ethics, at the end of the day, we forget what happened last week and we move on. And if Walmart's the convenient place to buy something, then Walmart's the convenient place to buy something. The American consumers are overall very apathetic to business ethics, right? Unless there is a trending hashtag. Okay. Unless there is something drawing their attention to it in the immediate.
Although, remember, the American public also includes Walmart vendors.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, if Walmart has poor business ethics, wouldn't vendors rather deal with Target?
Yeah, maybe, if that's
it depends on what you're defining as ethics. Like, they can sell all the guns they want, and as long, like, the vendors don't care. They're going to sell to anyone who's willing to give them a reasonable contract. As long as Walmart continues to sell, vendors don't care about all that.
Let me ask you this. Do you think, like, there's constant talk about vote with your dollars, right? Or, like, protest the business. Mm-hmm. Do you think that does anything?
Protest has never done anything.
I don't know if I agree with that. And that's fine. I think that sometimes vote with your dollars works. It can certainly affect outcomes when it's sustained long enough, right? When it can start affecting a whole quarter's worth of revenue, sure.
But how do you do that? Like, right?
Well,
right.
In today's world when everything's conglomerated, right?
But I mean, let's talk about that famous business based out of here in Atlanta. That famous business that totally went out of business a few years ago for their treatment of the LGBTQ community, right? Chick-fil-A. They're gone now, right? They're gone. We never see a Chick-fil-A anymore.
Absolutely.
Including in more blue states. I moved here a few years ago from New Jersey, which is a very blue state overall. New Jersey, New York, all of those Chick-fil-A's went out. No, they didn't. They're still there, right? Nothing happened to them. And that's actually come back around in at least my social media feeds recently that, like, hey, don't forget, we still can't eat there.
Right?
We actually occasionally make that joke about it, but I mean, Amazon treats its people horribly. I mean, the stories are out there. They're still the number one company, and I don't buy anywhere else. I've stopped actually shopping retail. I shop online now strictly, and I know that Amazon is horribly treating people, and as a result of Amazon's existence, entire cities are going out of business. But
So which do you like better, Uber or Lyft?
Uber.
Why not Lyft? They seem to have better ethics.
I mean, yes, their drivers can get more money, but again, I don't care.
Well, because I deleted Uber, I went with Lyft just because I just thought that software crap they were pulling, was just too
I started
for me to
using
deal
Lyft.
with.
I mean, according to my my personal ethics.
Well, although I own a Volkswagen, and I wouldn't trust anyone who makes more than $1 million a Volkswagen ever says. I mean, they are known liars. They make a good product, but for me, I don't care if they say it's a good product. I need it independently verified because they're liars.
Right.
Man, in the big picture of things, I think that corporations consolidated and conglomerized and became way too wealthy. And I don't even think wealthy is the right word. I think that certain corporations really own the means to survival.
Oh, yeah.
Especially at least in first world, United States of America.
Oh, sure.
I mean, it's like you guys were saying. How you're not going to go ahead and shop at Walmart? Especially maybe if you're making a minimum wage salary or something like that.
Yeah.
Or you got 3 or 4 kids you're trying to go ahead and raise. Maybe you do have ethics. And you care about how Walmart or maybe whatever Amazon treats their employees. But how do you avoid that?
Well, but at some point, isn't poor business ethics analogous to using your well as your toilet? I mean, you can always sneak next door and use their well, but
I'm not
don't you know
following your
where the water
analogy.
comes from? Don't you? I mean, there's only one group of people that I would happily see flogged in public, and that would be a crooked prosecutor. I think they kill society.
Sure.
Did you segue?
Probably. But
Are
I
we going
didn't
to
need
talk
to.
about
No, but I mean,
Mueller?
but ethics are.
He's not a prosecutor, but it's also he's
Yeah.
a special.
Yeah, right.
prosecutor.
Okay. Oh, well. So far,
I don't know the history of Mueller. How long has he been? And what was his position?
Former head of
job?
the FBI.
Former head of the,
And
the
I don't know what
FBI.
he did before that.
And you always see that picture out there of
And
him
I've got a
in
special
Vietnam,
device.
right? Served in Vietnam. I guess he was a special agent for a while.
Had something to do with the Martha Stewart case. In the background of my day to day, somebody there was a news something running that was he helped shut down the mob and put Martha Stewart in prison and blah blah blah. And I was like,
wait a minute,
how
what?
old is this guy? He shut down the mob.
Around, yeah.
Sorry, that was literally something I just heard from a TV near
so
me.
far, I've been incredibly pleased by his punctilio.
That man doesn't say shit. You notice that?
I mean,
Mueller? He doesn't say anything.
No.
No.
Word. Good.
Good.
He shouldn't.
Everybody that's ever talked about Mueller has nothing but good things to say in general about
Oh
him.
my God.
he's from everything I've heard, he's a consummate professional, and also the way he's running this investigation, I think is pretty smart. Instead of holding a press conference every time he has a minor breakthrough, he's just no, I'm doing my job. Everyone can
He's
speculate
no
all
Comey.
they want.
I'm going to go write a book.
Well,
Yeah.
he's not grandstanding.
Well-
This whole thing with Michael Cohen, he didn't do it.
Right.
He found evidence. He turned it over to the Southern District of New York.
Yeah.
Right.
They did it. I mean,
You think that was intentional?
No,
Like
no,
they
no,
turned it
I think
over
it
to
was
the
the
well,
Southern-
it was intentional because it was the law.
There was a law, but I
It's
mean,
a-
I'm not well versed in who you go ahead and turn it over to. But there's a Southern District. Why not the Northern District or Western District? Why that one in particular?
Well,
Couldn't he
that
Couldn't
I
he
don't
have
know. It might just have been a geographical.
something to
Based-
look up?
based-
That's where
I need to go back to school.
was. That's
Based
weird.
fully on my experience with Showtime's Billions, which is an excellent TV show.
Sorry, Joe.
Starring Paul Giamatti as the whatever. It's internal politics or routing of who has jurisdiction to what. It doesn't seem like no news report, nothing I've read indicates that he did anything wrong
No.
or untoward or
Yeah.
outside of protocol. And it was just he's doing everything by the books, and it's almost starving the media. Right, they want the sensationalism. They want what's Mueller got you go more than a week or two without any new sensationalism coming out of that, and they go, he's got nothing.
Yeah.
He's got nothing. Investigation's dead.
Witch
Sure,
hunt,
he's still
yeah.
interviewing people, but not Trump's witch hunt comments, right? But
Yeah.
the media going, the story spins and becomes, Mueller's dead in the water. Clearly, we would have heard something by now. He's been doing this for 8 months.
Bernie
And then-
supporters come out. See, there was no Russia involved. I told you. I told you.
And then as soon as something like Cohen happens, it's oh, Mueller's gonna get him. He's going to jail next month. He's gonna go.
Yeah.
We're gonna impeach him tomorrow. And it's like, guys, either way, if he's got something or if he doesn't got something, he's not telling us. And it's just media spin on every small piece of...
That has to drive Donald Trump crazy, too. He's like a media consumer.
Yeah.
He sits there and like watches Fox News and stuff, and that's where he generally gets his highlights from all reports and stuff. It has to freaking drive him up the wall.
Oh, especially the time it's taking. Legal process is glacial.
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
Yeah, always.
I mean, it always was when I was working. My wife... We're in domestic relations. People saying, "I can't believe I've been in this divorce for 2 friggin' years." I mean, and that's simple. So in other words, Mueller's about the only one that I'm actually pleased with.
I think Mueller's done a fantastic job.
Do you feel it's a witch hunt?
Do I feel it's a witch hunt? I don't have
whatever
the
that is,
information
whatever
to
it is.
answer that, but answering that I believe that Mueller's doing a fantastic job means I believe that he has things, and he's moving on them, and he's ignoring the press and information and doing his job, and I respect that.
Yeah.
And
he's really he's really not letting it be tried in the press.
Right.
Right? Like everything's from an unnamed third-party source that will not I heard that Mueller killed a cat. No, what? No, like it's all just that, right?
Right.
But Comey, though, what do you guys think of him?
His new book?
Yeah.
I haven't read
Garbage.
I mean, obviously I haven't read it. Saw some of the highlights and whatnot. Listened to
He wants
some
to
of the
run for
political
office.
debate.
He
gonna
said
run for office.
specifically he wouldn't. So I don't think.
Right, sure.
Well, I
and
don't
Barack
believe he
Obama's
has-
never running for president. He's just a junior congressman from Chicago.
I don't believe that he has the take, and everybody I've talked on both sides of the aisle thinks he's an idiot.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
what?
We've never
from
elected
people
an
that
idiot.
I've but he doesn't come across. He's
because he's not intellectually diminished. He must have done something really stupid to get that
to get the idiot piece. He has. I mean, the Hillary email thing. He admits even in his book that he didn't think that the numbers were there in the polls and actually responded to the polls and stuff by just putting that information out there.
Dude.
He was whoring out that, and now he's trying to whore out a book that. I mean, a million people have done the Donald Trump tell-all a lot better.
It's obvious he's trying to go ahead and save his legacy at the very least. He believes this whole incident has put him in yellow highlighting in the books of history of the guy who fucked up the election. Yeah. And so I think this book is a big case of that. Of him trying to explain himself as, I'm so naive. I was just I didn't know.
No,
guys.
it's not naive. It's I'm so idealistic.
Yeah, there you go.
I am so pure. And,
exactly.
And, he's going to run for office.
He's
going to run for office.
He's going to make money and disappear into the
Well,
thing.
He's
allowed
political
to.
calculation.
He doesn't have the pull together. I don't think he's going to have the pull together.
Whether or not he gets party backing is a different question. But I think this is round one.
It's his dream.
So I've watched a decent portion of the George Stephanopoulos interview. I haven't watched the whole thing, and I'll admit that. Mm-hmm. But I've watched a decent portion of it, and the way he comports himself, the way he just talks, is the same coming out, I wrote a book, tell all, 18 months from now he's running for office, right? He's running for something in 2020. I don't think it's president or anything, but maybe congressman or mayor, or where's he from?
Tallest man in the world? Dude's freaking what? He's almost 7 foot.
All right, further speculation. Risking poor phrasing, the people who basically own the Russian economy, the quote oligarchs,
right?
Which today might even be synonymous with what used to be called the Russian mafia. They're all the same guys, right? Mm-hmm. Talk about business people. These guys are business people. I mean, they don't like flashy stuff. I mean, whether they're trafficking 14-year-old girls or timber out of Siberia, they just want the money. There's the same thing's true with these oil pipelines that are crossing. No, and to see splashy stuff hitting U.S. airways with Comey investigation stuff is just horrible to them. The question remains, assuming arguendo that Russia did seek to influence the American presidential election, do you think that's been their first attempt to insert themselves into the American governmental system?
No, why would it be?
That's
there's several famous cases of Russian
and New York real estate has always been, let's just say a lot of these New York properties have Russian owners.
Yeah. Okay.
And the speculation was Comey felt his hand was forced with a lot of this stuff during the election because he couldn't trust one of his own U.S. attorneys up in New York. So in other words, he was, as you were saying, it was internal politics. He was having to save his ass from a sabotage backdoor from people who'd basically been turned.
I mean,
I have no idea. I almost hate to say this because it sounds it's more like fiction.
That sounds
than
conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Art Bell,
Oh,
famous radio show host. Used to listen to him when I was younger, but continue.
although there is that line, yes, crazy, but is it crazy enough? But I can't imagine that in 2015 some Russian sat up out of bed and said, "Gee, I wonder if we could have success in infiltrating the American system."
There's no way it's the first time.
Oh, no.
Well, we've talked about past times. We talked about RTVs being going since 2002. We talked about the Occupy Wall Street and how they pretty much orchestrated that. Yeah, even before the internet revolution. Now it's easy for them to at least try.
Well, and if you're wanting to actually not take over a country, that's boring. Then you have to run it. I mean, no, but if you basically want to subvert it to your practices, if I was doing it, the first people I'd go after was first the prosecutors, then the judges. Boom.
Well, yeah, I would say
American
that.
system, yeah.
I would say that for the I guess I would imagine for Russians, any U.S. destability is going to be good.
Yeah.
So
In the short run,
you
at
know,
least.
I mean, in the short run, it gives them room to breathe. You know, at least when it comes to foreign matters and whatnot. They've been living under threat of sanctions for decades and decades now. So I'm pretty sure the Russian oligarchs and corporatists and stuff over there are pretty nifty at being able to get around and live that way. Like, you froze my bank account again. Oh, what am I going to do? You know, I mean, like...
That was certainly the only bank account I have.
Right. The only one they found.
So, yeah, I mean, any instability here is a good thing. And I think that I think that Trump maybe just came out as like an amazing opportunity.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, we were talking about this before the election, that the nature of his business makes him uniquely well-suited for these contexts. Real estate. I mean, it's like, there's no way he can avoid conflict of interest, which has now been neatly proposed. Like Obama, most of his money was in stocks and bonds, right? You can put it in a blind trust, and you have no idea what the trust is. Of course, you'd have no idea what they're going to talk about over lunch, but arguably, they're almost fungible. He has no idea if he owns a certain amount of GE or if he owns a certain amount of Aeroflot. I mean, Trump does exactly what he does. You can look at it on Google Maps. I mean, you can. It's right there. I mean, so he knows if he pushes a federal highway bill that's going to be going right.
You know what? This is the problem with, I think, globalization that we're going to have to figure out. Because in the future, there'll be another guy running for office who's going to be a multi-billion trillionaire who's going to have a lot of corporate interests, and they're going to be all around the globe. And all those people he's dealing with, they're going to see him running, or her, running for office, and they're going to be like, this is a perfect opportunity for push some items or get some things done. And I mean, I don't know how we're going to deal with it as things become more and more interconnected. It's no longer do you have to put your letter on a boat and it takes a month or two to get to Russia in order to get a business deal done or use your telegraph. Now it's instantaneous. For all we know, Trump could have a burner with Putin's number on it.
Probably does.
It's a flip phone.
I mean, I know I do.
You know?
Well, although to do a McLaughlin thing, Trump is sloppy and easily manipulated. Yes or no, Shawn?
I think that's the great mystery of 2017, of this presidency, right? Is I don't know. I honestly don't know if he's. There's been multiple accounts, including in Cohen. Who were we just talking about? Comey.
Michael Comey.
In Comey's interview, he talks about Trump being of above average intelligence, right? Like, it seems like people who get in the room with him seem to not think he's a complete buffoon. And then he has this public persona, and I don't. I'm always going, is this a calculated move? Does he know what he's doing? Is he playing like three-dimensional chess? I have no idea. I have no idea the answer to your question.
I've generally pushed on this, that I think that he's a very, very intelligent man, and that there's a
David believes Trump is like Lex Luthor.
There's
Maybe.
a certain...
That's my nightmare.
That's an
There-
interesting
there-
analogy
I
considering
don't know
he's
what
the bad guy
sorry.
considering he's the bad.
There's a certain persona that people almost have to adapt to try to justify and explain, and they've tried to push this message of Trump the moron, but his ideas are coming together pretty well. Like I said, I actually like his foreign policies. I do think they are self-interested, but I think that it's working out as it turns out. And this may be blind luck, as you said, but
Look,
I think it's
a
good
clock
blind
is
luck.
right.
But at the bottom line,
Do you depend on that, though? Do you depend on a broken clock?
He's a very intelligent man, very, very intelligent. He's a good businessman, and he's got
You
the
didn't quite
willingness
answer the
to
question.
flop his balls
Yeah,
up.
but
Is
is
he
he-
easy manipulated?
Yeah, is he sloppy and easily? I hate the word evil. It's
Is
so,
he easily manipulated? No.
No, is he sloppy?
Yes. He's sloppy. I don't know whether it's part of his game plan in a sense of having, because part of it has been the more he kind of makes these outlandish things, the more he becomes a moving target, and the more he throws the Liberal Party into chaos. So it could be entirely manipulated. I think that the tweet out needs to be at least thought about a little bit more, but
Just a little bit more?
it may have led to a lot of positive things. We may be getting out of having to give over all our
I
intellectual
don't like
property.
my government run by happenstance. Like a roll of the dice, and if it comes up good, we celebrate
So
that.
that's what we're talking about. Where it may not be a roll of the dice. This
I
may
don't
be
know,
his
man.
plan.
Is he playing three-dimensional chess, or is
That's
he?
it.
He's playing
Or is he?
checkers, man.
Or is he? A
He's
He,
playing
he
Connect
may
Four.
have you in
He's playing
checkmate
Connect
on
Four.
two different levels that you don't even understand.
Yeah,
I don't know which one of those is more my nightmare of whether he's Lex Luthor playing three-dimensional chess on a level we don't understand, and it's all part of like a grand master plan, or if he's just Mr. Magoo bumbling through, happening to solve the mystery.
I don't think it's either.
Because none of these are
I don't think
mutually
it's either.
conclusive. You can be
Yeah,
a
and it can be-
brilliant person.
it can
who's
be
also
anywhere.
sloppy
Exactly.
and
Ben
independent.
Carson, for instance. Think
Yeah,
about him.
very
Brain
good.
surgeon. Super smart.
Sure.
Put him in charge of HUD. Has no idea what he's doing.
At least
at
he
all.
admitted it once.
You know, at all. So you know, and that's what I think we're judging Trump by. I think we're looking at some instances where he is really intelligent. He's really good at working camera. You know, dealing with the public. He's savvy and he's smart at that.
Oh, sure.
But that's being smart at that does not qualify you in being smart at all the other things I think that you need to maybe have normal intelligence for when it comes to being the president of the United States or running an executive office. And that's my thing. It's like you can be great at TV. You know, you can be fantastic at working the camera, saying the right thing. But at the same time, you know, starting up trade wars, your cabinet is rotating every single day. You're making literally enemies every day. The people that you need on your side, you are trusting
Who's this enemy that you need on your side?
enemies.
But-
Well, I would go ahead and say that before all the BS happened, I think that a Comey could have been a friend for him.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. That's just one. But I'm not going to go down the whole list because there's a bunch of other things. You know, as far as somebody who's like not being easily manipulated, we know without a shadow of a doubt that his daughter is the one who's like convinced him in a few occasions. I can't think of them right now. That affected I think at least some internal cabinet changes and in policy in that direction. Just because she was the one. You know, Steve Bannon came along and told him pretty much what to do, what to say. I mean, he's had many people around him. I think he's easily manipulated. I think he's a person that if you go ahead and you rub his balls long enough, just long enough, caress them gently and slowly, he's gonna break you off one. He's gonna be like, all right, you know, I think that this is the person who's lived their entire life in the limelight, who's garnered so much attention. I think that he has a desperate need for validation.
Is he
the
doing-
reason I think, excuse me, if I can chime in on the answer to my own question, the reason I think he's sloppy and easily manipulated is because, by his own admission, he doesn't read.
Doesn't
He
read.
doesn't like to read.
Yeah.
And that means his only sources of information are going to be who's standing next to him and what he can garner off of TV. cause. I'm not sure I would trust anything I saw on TV now. And how I'm going to make a blanket statement, if you don't read a lot, this world is going to be impenetrable. I mean, and for him to be in that office and not to even read his executive summaries,
Yeah, that's crazy.
to not to be well versed on foreign policy times, to not even read translations from other languages. Of course, he's easily manipulated, but he has to be. There's no other place for him to get his information except for whatever hack happens to get in the room.
He's actually transcended. He's extraordinarily unpopular, yet our economy is doing really well, which doesn't happen. Usually you can link a president's popularity and an economy at a 1-to-1 ratio.
Well, although, so is it a good thing to get rid of government regulation?
That's a very broad and trapped question.
All right, you didn't bite. All right, okay.
Yes.
Snapped on air. Oh, well, snapped on air. So. Good question. It's
I tend towards it. However, I tend to like it, but there are many, many, many situations where no, it's not. I'm not an anarchist by any stretch. I'm not a libertarian by any stretch.
Anarchy's a whole other.
Whatever happened to Gary Johnson? Where did he go?
What do you mean? What happened?
The second that
in his
he
living room
didn't know
right now,
what Aleppo
listening
was,
to this.
the second he didn't know what Aleppo was, everybody wrote him off.
Yeah.
Done. Lost his
Which
steam.
again comes down to, I think, at a certain level, reading, right, or keeping yourself abreast of the facts.
think how horribly difficult it is. I mean, even the best intentioned do dumb things like Gary Johnson. But
it's being almost too honest, and it's kind of sad that we as Americans can't take too much of a level of honesty, because no president can be what we're trying to make them is. This person that knows everything and can answer any question in a drop of a hat. So most of these deflections, I don't think are deflections. It's just most people, much better than Gary Johnson, know how to deflect the answer.
Rather than say, I don't know, but I'll find out. Right?
Or it's
like,
too
nobody wants to hear that.
Complicated a question to answer in this 2-minute segment.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, or it's, I think one of the basic things they teach you is if you don't like the question,
change the premise.
You answer the question you want to answer.
Right.
Whether it's what they ask for.
Gary Johnson failed the performance test, not necessarily the knowledge test.
Right.
It's like, you can't do the lingo. You can't. I guess
he didn't have the policy.
And you don't want somebody in front of, like, you want to talk about bad foreign policy. Oh, I don't know what's going on in your country. Like,
absolutely.
Thanks.
Be super honest.
We elected that guy anyway.
He's willing to deflect. He's willing to make things great and put the question, just like we were talking. If there's one thing I think we can all agree at that is a positive attribute of Trump, is he knows how to manipulate media and keep things pointed the way he wants.
Positive. That's like saying he sure knows how to shoot. Whether that's positive or negative is
right. Yeah, I think that you're correct, and that's certainly part of the president and the president's apparatus, is like the director of communication and their team's job. Right, that needs to be part of the skill set. But I think to Brent's point earlier, what I'm afraid of is when he's in the room one-on-one. Is he still trying to manipulate a room of 3 the way he manipulates a stadium of 20,000? Because it does not play the same, right?
No, he's asking, are you loyal, Shawn?
Are you loyal? I'm not. I'm really super not.
I don't know.
You got to try to find out.
The liberal attempt at change of his persona has made it impossible to know what the person who he truly is.
Oh, really?
I think
so. My God, please. It's all the liberals' faults out there that they're just obscuring Trump's true, beautiful soul.
No, it's just,
as long as they get the
not
credit
a beautiful
for the good
soul.
things, too.
I honestly don't know what he is one-on-one, but I can say that he's going to come across confident and act like he's in charge.
Of course.
And that is something
that's
that
how he got
to
where he is.
To do. But as to his exact thing, since they've made a do no right scenario out of Trump, we don't know what the man's really like anymore.
But on the other end, you don't think there's enough information on this guy stretching back God knows how many years to get a good handle on this guy's personality?
I do. He's a manipulator that likes to be in charge and will take control of the conversation. I mean, even if you don't like him and think otherwise, I mean, the demand of loyalty is a good sign of that. I don't think he's going to come across as an idiot.
Well, how would his policies be different if he had instead gotten his current position by taking over the Democratic Party? I got the feeling it was almost just a matter of opportunity for him.
Right.
Me too. I mean, he was a Democrat for many years. And
How do you think his policies would be different?
he would adapt everything that the Democrats had within the level that he could make it pander to make his business grow as well and his name grow.
Yeah, I think that's where he's really going to make out is, if I had even $1 million and the levers of government for even a week, I could hardly imagine think of all the information that he's got. I mean, all the CI reports on all of his competitive companies. This has been a great business opportunity for him.
Look at Jared Kushner, for instance. As soon as he got there.
Where's those CIA reports? Let's go ahead and look at some of that.
This
is pretty cool.
Well, no, there was marketing research at gunpoint.
I appreciate it.
What more could one ask?
What do you think about, you know what? Mark Zuckerberg sitting in front of Congress, right? It was so sad. I mean, it was one of those instances where you just get to see how technology and society and its integration is outpacing our government system. It was like you just see these, frankly, elderly folks asking very obvious questions. Not really even... It reminded me of all the questioning that happened back when the recession in 2007, where you had all these bankers, sitting in front of, the Senate, the House, and you can tell, like, there's just this whole element of, like, performance, where they're, like, pretty much, look what you're doing, trying to go ahead and, present themselves as being tough, but it's just meaningless. And, the bankers just sit there, deflect, and go say, we'll try to do a better job, we're sorry, can I go now?
No.
Exactly. It was kind of the same thing all over again.
I like science fiction writers because they think about the future for a living. They're usually incredibly smart people who certainly qualifies. In an interview recently, because he's getting kind of old, he made the comment that, these engineers, these, quote, tech companies, and it didn't start with Facebook, like we're talking like Eastman Kodak, they create this stuff and then they just pitch it out to the world with no idea what it's going to do. It's like dreaming up a drug, testing it on 5 rats, and then boom, it's in the marketplace. I think that's what Facebook did, as so many have done. I mean, they took what they thought was a really cool idea, maybe even surprised when it turned into a force of world domination, and didn't think it through. By God, this can be used to bully people into suicide. This can be used to completely slant the worldview of anyone who looks at it.
I don't think they're as innocent as you say, and the House actually got into this. Like, yes, as Mark repeatedly said in both houses, you can opt out. But the fact that all these older people, or really so many people, had no clue that you could, means that it's pretty damn well hidden how you can opt out.
Agreed.
And their money and their entire stock is based on the fact that people are willing to spend a lot of money for these profiles. Mm-hmm. So they can't, like, if they were to try make it the default that you're opted out, and then you have to go through all these
that they wouldn't make any money.
And it was asked of them, would you be willing to reverse things and make it so that whatever you have to do right now to opt out, that's how you opt in? And he said, Senator, it's too complicated. I mean,
I know. This is sort of like changing the laws so that everyone can buy alcohol unless you opt out by proving that you're too young. That works, doesn't it?
It's a terrible setup and notion, and I mean, they know that they're selling and manipulating data. He is not that innocent.
No.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And he's a trickster from the beginning. At least if the Social Network movie, which is the entirety of where I otherwise get it,
right.
and hearing that he has like a engineer's thing, he doesn't have a lot of moral fiber. I think that'd be safe to say.
I don't know.
I mean, what robot does?
Duke can play poker and probably win, man. He has like just a straight blank.
That was the
like,
backup plan. If Facebook didn't, if Facebook didn't pan out, world champions championship of poker.
It's just that gaunt look. I think
brilliant. I mean, of course he took all the blame. He wasn't being charged with a crime, and it doesn't matter if they blame him, as long as they don't blame his company.
Exactly. Same move Goldman Sachs did, and
I
countless
don't mind being
companies
embarrassed
before.
for a couple of
I'll
hours
come
for
up here,
a few
sit up here,
billion
and let you
dollars.
scream at me for a few hours. Done. All right, then. See you later.
All right.
Yep.
Back to Cabo. Back to.
And so it was just, it just felt so meaningless. And of course, I guess it was a slow news week, or it felt like broadcast media was definitely trying to parlay this up into some huge thing. Go ahead and pay attention to this. Look at he's Mark Zuckerberg. He's walking in. He's shown walking in, looking around and everything. They're standing outside. He's sitting down. There's this huge circus and theater of this. But it's like we saw all this before, many times. And
honestly, they probably haven't broadcast a lot of those interviews that were more impactful, right? Like, I think people watched the Zuckerberg one. I had a lot of friends, and maybe it's because I went to a tech school, so a lot of my friends live in that world, right? But I know a lot of people were watching, right? A lot of people were watching live. A lot of people were watching after the fact. I don't know that many people that watched like the Wells Fargo interviews. What was it, last year, a year before?
Couldn't stand more than 5 minutes.
And I mean, that's
my attention span's too low.
fraud on a massive, like actually illegal fraud on a massive scale, and that affects millions, if not more.
You know how low level, street criminals, gangsters and stuff, you get stripes if you go to jail, right? Like you get you get a little bravado, you're tough. That's a mark on your record of street cred. It's like that's what this is like for major CEOs of corporations. It's like if you make it to the point where you're sitting in front of like the House and the Senate and they're grilling you, you've made it.
And the overall coverage is that they looked like idiots. Right?
Exactly.
I understand what you were saying earlier. The House did a lot better job than the Senate.
Well, they prepared. They watched the Senate and were like, guys.
Let's compare average ages there too. There's a lot more of them. They're overall a lot younger. They're a lot less tenured. And a good interview in front of Mark Zuckerberg can make or break your career in the House. Nobody in the Senate has anything to lose in front of Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, right.
They're getting reelected. It's fine.
Right. I still think he was going to run for president.
Who, Zuckerberg?
Yeah.
I hope he's too smart for that.
Yeah, why run for president when you can own the president? Right?
There you go.
In other words, we're highlighting problems that are beyond the power of government to solve.
Well, beyond the power of our government, maybe. Like, if our government was willing to make more decisive action.
Fries?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Thanks, man.
in other words, how could could the government regulate the free speech of Facebook by approving some accounts and disapproving other accounts? That would be worse than the disease.
Yeah.
So, now this is why I was babbling on about business ethics. I mean,
well, is it a matter of approving and disapproving accounts or what people post, or is it a matter of putting in place regulations on how our data is farmed? Not just for Facebook, but for the tech industry in general. And I will 100% clarify, especially from our fraternity brothers that are listening, I don't know. I'm an idiot. But
Somebody call you up and you're like, hey, man,
yeah, no, they
you know
will.
what the hell you're talking about.
They'll be like, look, don't you remember anything? And I'm like, no, I got a degree in theater.
well, it is. I mean, from a social psychologist's point of view, this is fabulous. Be able to actually study real-time people's actual behavior instead of requiring your freshman sociology students to take dumb surveys in the college quad.
Yeah.
I mean,
Can you imagine what the future is going to look like with that? Where, like, let's say you think you are suffering some type of mental ailment of some sort, right? And instead of going to the psychologist, you'll go to the psychological synthesis analyzer 5000, and I don't know, you'll put in your government card that maybe has your email address, your official email or whatever, and it just scans everything you have, all the information compiled on you that's on the internet, builds a profile, then spits out your issue.
Oh yeah, and it actually worked.
Remember back in 2014 when you wrote that post on Facebook X about your daddy slapping you? That's where it started.
Or just something. In other words, analysis indicates your viewing habits have tended towards more and more violent behaviors. Are you having an anger issue, Mr. Thompson?
Yeah.
Right, and then we get into Minority Report, right?
Yeah.
Where I know Minority Report had a sci-fi component with the 3 people in the
in the
back.
tub.
Yeah, but at some point there's an algorithm going.
Predictive algorithm.
Right, there's an algorithm going. Sorry, Brent, you're going to kill someone tomorrow. You're going to jail today.
What do you do?
I don't know.
Do y'all watch Black Mirror?
Yes.
Yeah.
You see that episode? You see the latest season? Season 4?
Yes.
So this reminded me of the episode where the 2 couple, like they're going through this dating algorithm where it's supposed to match them 99.8% of the time.
That was wonderful.
Yeah, wasn't that crazy?
That was a great episode.
That was a really good episode. I like that one a lot.
That was cute.
I knew something was funny, but I didn't see that coming. I was like, oh.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
Didn't
all
know.
right.
What's it like to be in a simulation?
A simulation just cranking out different algorithms or different scenarios 1,000 or so times, letting it all play out, and then boom. In the future, we'll be able to go ahead and simulate a universe, right? It'll all just be electrons. And there will be entities in this universe, just electronic representations of it. But will they know that?
I have a question for you, for the table, that kind of ties our conceptual conversation about Facebook back into Syria, right, where we theoretically started. So something that you said, it was interesting to me right when we started talking about Syria, which was the reaction of the American population to another possible war, right? Do you feel like there has been a significant reaction by the general population, right? Not talking heads in the media, but by the general population, by the people in your lives, right? And this is anecdotal evidence and doesn't support anything, but do the 4 of us feel that people really have been affected the same way when it was announced that we were going to invade Iraq? Or when we were going to war in Afghanistan, or when
no,
I don't think so either.
Close.
And so I don't think so either. And I'm also interested in, obviously it's not the same level of action. We didn't invade a country. We along with other powers bombed a country. So, do you feel like in the last 15 years, right, since 2003, we have become.
We still do it.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much.
We have become more and more desensitized to things like this, whereas maybe 15 years ago, all people would be talking about on the Monday after an action like that at work is, did you see what happened? What do you think this means? Are we going to invade? Whereas, nobody on Monday at my job, and we're a pretty ghastly bunch, talked about Syria. It didn't even come up until halfway through the day. I went, oh, right, Syria happened this weekend.
Yeah. You know what the response? People just go...
Yeah, what are we going to do?
Well, I think we've been, a lot of it's been, we have, and this goes back to Trump being excellent at keeping everybody moving target. We get so much news, we've joked about it on this podcast, that we really can't plan topics in advance because so much is going to happen in the next 2 weeks that any advanced planning is futile.
It's like Lily Tomlin's line of, I know I'm cynical, but I can't seem to keep up.
You bringing up back when the first Iraq war happened, that reminds me of I was in school. I was in high school, I believe.
Me too.
Freshman or something like that. And I remember when, Twin Towers fell, and then there was all this stuff all over the news. Everybody was just gassed. But then they started talking about going to war. And I remember being a teenager and all the, my teenage friends, they were all like, we're going to war. Yeah, we're going to war. We're going to go ahead and we're going to fuck them up. It was even now this is just teenage kids, bravado and stuff like that. But there was an energy to it.
Oh yeah. Right.
There was definitely an energy like, we're going to go do this. We're
it's
going to go
really
fly over
scary when you
there.
see
People were
elected
excited,
officials do
right?
that.
Even if you go back and look at the footage, go on YouTube sometime. Go ahead and check the old newsreels for the beginning of the Iraq War. People were excited. Like, visibly, let's, a mission accomplished.
Yeah, we're
let's
gonna
do it.
that. Yeah, right.
Well, in our generation, right? We hadn't had a significant war in generations.
Yeah.
Right. So people didn't remember. It was an older generation that remembered the costs of what we were talking about doing. And the fact is that we're still at war. Like people have just kind of forgotten that we're still in both Afghanistan and Iraq. And not to age anyone out, but it's definitely people in my age group that are over there.
Yeah.
Right. It's my friends I was in high school with that 3 years later, signed up and went over and then came back. And it was that last part that that wasn't so hype anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Well, then, would you and your friends agree with the proposition that I read in a
I will speak for all millennials now. Yes, I will speak for all millennials now.
Right, of course.
Right.
You've been elected as the spokesman for your age bracket.
Sorry, Brent.
Yeah, or whatever. Anyone agree with the idea that at least since Nam, the American as regards the American military and the people who control it, were tactically matchless. Were wizards almost, but were strategic imbeciles. Would that be accurate?
I think
we can kill anything, but we don't know what to do once we got it.
Ancient Orange, the entire jungle, and then afterwards just scratch your head.
Yeah.
I would tentatively, again, like with no further research into this question, I would tentatively agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think a part of it is right. We can kill people better, faster, and stronger than ever before. But I think a lot of it is also that, to a certain extent, our military is now led by a legislative body, rather than commanding officers. Right? I think that...
Elaborate.
Sure. I think that if you look back to World War II, we put a lot of command decisions in the field to people like Eisenhower and MacArthur, Patton. Thank you. Yeah, those guys had control over their own things, and part of that is technology, right? Because it's going to take, they may be at a forward observation base or the World War II equivalent of it, and not be near the telegraph line. So it's going to take 3 weeks to get them orders. So they have to be making decisions. They can't wait 3 weeks for the communique to come to them, right? I think now that we're in an instantaneous time zone, right? And I think, exactly. Like, I can just text whoever's running things over in Afghanistan and be like, hey, man. And in a certain level, like, that means that our intelligence gets to us faster. That means that we have up-to-the-minute intel, right? But it also means that every single field decision is reacted to immediately, is scrutinized immediately, and if you are a career leader in the military, you now have to think about what 535 people sitting in a building in Washington are going to do to you. I'm trying to think of the last truly militarily minded president that we had. It's Eisenhower?
That's a figure immediately came into my head. Eisenhower,
Yeah, I'm trying to go back step by step.
He was the last military leader we had as a president, basically.
That's what I'm trying to say, yeah.
So I don't think anyone else...
no, after that, it was a death of that generation.
Hoover kind of had the mind, just didn't
necessarily...
didn't have the opportunity to execute.
Maybe.
Hoover.
Oh, no,
that
he
been
wasn't the
before.
president.
Okay. I see what you're saying. I was like...
After him... After Eisenhower, dang, I know I sound like a moron right now. Who's president after Eisenhower?
You don't have the entire list memorized?
No.
All 40?
Don't shame me.
Wasn't that Kennedy?
That's what I was thinking in my head.
Was it?
We're going to go with Kennedy.
Yeah, 54 to 60, Eisenhower. Kennedy
So,
60.
Kennedy was like a generation of this new type of presidency, right? One very personality-based, charismatic, very flashy. He did like,
At least he had military service. He did,
military service.
Yeah.
But he wasn't a general.
Yeah.
He wasn't a field commander. He didn't understand.
He was a personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I'm a... Broad strokes, I'm going to say I'm a fan of Kennedy. You can get into specifics with any president, right? But I think that military power has left the Oval Office in a way, and I think between that and between the advent of modern technology, we no longer leave strategy to the strategically minded, to the strategians.
Strategians?
Strategists.
Strategists.
Thank you.
Right.
It's one of those moments. The strategizers.
The strategies. Like, are kind of
The
old.
strategies. Yeah.
Strategeries.
The strategeries. Our strategeries aren't with our strategizers.
The strategies.
I'm going to
I
run
like
as a
that
folksy
phrase.
presidential candidate someday, guys.
Well, although,
We doubt you
although
now.
perhaps I'm getting confused
Fast forward.
with strategy and tactics. Iraq is probably the most recent great example. We rolled right through and there are how many hours?
Right.
I mean, and that was the tactical part.
Yeah.
The strategy
which
part
we're still doing well.
Is how do we turn it back into a functioning
Which
company?
we're not doing
That almost
well.
did such a terrible job that I almost have to conclude.
Well, that was
they actually
never.
didn't want it
You know
to
what
be a
though? But I don't think
functioning
was that
country.
ever like a thing when it comes to military wars and combat. Anyway, I feel like that's fairly new. The concept of
An exit
Well,
strategy.
taking
Marshall
something
Plan?
out and then coming back and like
No,
rebuilding.
the Marshall Plan. We base our world on that now.
I mean, we
Our
didn't even do.
allies are. Remember, our allies
Well,
were
think
the Axis
back to the
powers.
Reconstruction during the Civil War. We didn't even do that right, and I was here.
Oh,
Who just walked away and was like, "Well, y'all can go ahead and try to rebuild that."
yeah, sure enough.
I mean, it's like it just seems like it's not a. It's just a very hard component of war. The idea of like
Well, it is.
destroying
it's not the
something.
military's job. They're
Yeah.
not there to rebuild it. They're
Not since Rome.
Yeah, they're
right?
there to knock the crap out of it.
Yeah.
No, and I mean it. Like, centurions would invade your homeland, and they'd take it, and they would not burn or salt your land. They would take control, and then you would become a part of the Roman Empire, and then they would rebuild whatever they destroyed. And the centurions were the workforce that did all of that.
Yeah. Although I wonder how well they would have gone if the people they conquered could actually had home factories for AK-47s.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot easier to defend a Pilium against a Pilium. But
Yeah. No.
Hell, I'm
Well, I mean-
closer to home.
But as far as like rebuilding and follow through and exit strategy, I think that's where the failure is. Right? Is that
And that's where I'm really afraid that where Trump's going to go. Is he's going to turn some harebrained idea over to the tactical wizards, and then we'll have another,
and not have a strategy on
and
top
then
of
we'll
it.
have another ISIS. Because remember, that's where ISIS came from.
Yeah.
I mean, it's from the Baptist military members that were booted out with no pensions from Iraq.
I'm pretty sure there's some people who have. There's some top brass who have this philosophical belief that if you don't use it, you lose it. So it's this idea, this perpetual idea of like, in order to justify our existence, we have to be engaging in something.
Well, I think there's a level that you want to keep the rest of the world at some level of discord. And as you've been able to look back in history, you see that we put our hands there. We're the top power for a reason. We've been doing this for decades.
Oh, you're almost getting into the foreign policy as warehouse management theory, if you've ever heard that one.
I've not.
Oh, you never heard that one? LIFO, last in, first out.
Sure.
We've got all this armament sitting on the shelf. We've got to rotate this stuff,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, how the hell can we get new stock out if we don't use it?
Exactly. You build a hammer, it's hard not to,
Really?
want to find a reason to use it.
I mean, we have an excess of we have an excess of 50 caliber ammunition. We got to use it somewhere. I mean, after all, our manufacturers need to make more. What are they going to do with it?
Yeah.
As I said, I know I'm cynical, but I can't seem to keep up.
There's just been. I'm trying to think of like when did the military morph into this thing that it is now?
The military-industrial complex. Of Eisenhower.
They pointed out the famous quote. I guess it had to have been after World War II.
Sure.
When you go ahead and you build that high. You muster all your forces that much.
Well, am I the only one old enough to remember the movie Wag the Dog?
Nope, I was just thinking of that while you were talking.
One of the modern classics.
Yeah, very good.
So, I mean, I invite all 5 of our podcast listeners to go out and Wag the
Wag the
Dog.
Dog.
Well, cause
Pick up Shades.
out
50 Shades of
and
Grey
rent.
with it.
Hoffman
Go
and-
out and rent. Sorry.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I did it.
Showing your age, man.
Yeah.
I've recently heard that
Netflix?
there is a Blockbuster open in Anchorage, Alaska.
Yeah, there's like one left.
Yeah, there's like 4 left in the country. One of them's in Anchorage, Alaska. And my understanding is that they've recently received a bunch of Russell Crowe memorabilia, courtesy of John Oliver.
So I didn't read that article. So John Oliver actually did buy Russell
Spent like
Crowe's
$75,000. Not just the jockstrap, but a bunch of other random stuff from Russell Crowe's divorce auction, and sent it to
Why someone would
Russia.
Russell
Or Alaska, not Russia. Sorry.
Blockbuster, and it doesn't have one of those little ropes around of do not touch fingerprints.
The whole
I
thing
miss
was-
Blockbuster. Everybody misses Blockbuster. I'm showing my age, I guess. You know, my brother, he's 10 years younger than me. Never had really any experience with Blockbuster. Care less about it.
No, it's a thing to do.
Yeah, it's a thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, when mother was going to go to Blockbuster, be like, oh, that's the time to get that video game.
Oh,
Go ahead and
yes,
get that
walking
in.
back and forth in those
Yeah.
aisles, looking at all
Looking
the
at all
cool
the
pictures.
DVDs, movies,
Loved
and
it.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not anymore.
Nope.
Yeah.
Now you got Netflix. And then Netflix will be an old thing. Think about that. Eventually, my brother would be like, man, I remember Netflix where you like turn it on. And you had to sit in one place and watch it. It wasn't just directly in your brain. You had to actually go ahead and sit and view a screen.
Boy,
It was
I can
crazy.
hardly-
Have you seen the Black Mirror episode where they're all on bikes powering society?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, the very
Yeah.
first
They're
one.
not
Oh, yeah.
allowed to turn it off unless you
Yeah, definitely.
unless you pay for it.
You know what the creepiest episode, we're talking about Black Mirror for 1 second, was the one that Jodie Foster directed.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That one where they put the chip in the baby's head
Yeah. Yep.
and, you know,
And
the
they
mother
watch
can go ahead and
It
watch
censors
the
out
eyes.
violent images.
Yeah. That,
Yeah, that was clearly a bad idea.
clearly an awful
I
idea.
still think that of the Black Mirrors, the one where everybody was rating one another definitely had the biggest impact because Angie and I aren't on social media
anymore.
because of it.
You, really? That was a good episode. That was, like, I think one of the best.
Oh,
I signed up for
well,
social media.
well, they were also good. I like the one where the cartoon character became a political candidate.
Oh, yeah. In Britain, it was like a
Waldo,
blue
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
It was
Waldo,
actually not a person
yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
Whatever interest wants to manipulate it is the candidate. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would still say my favorite
makes
one
me
to
think of
date
Trump, by the way.
is the one where the chick's boyfriend dies in a car crash and she orders a new one and he comes in a box.
Yep.
And he,
Oh,
like,
that's
yeah.
Well,
that's
the memories
Haley
of the
Atwell and Jamal Gleason. I recently watched that and I was like,
Yeah?
that's Agent Carter and Admiral, Evil Ginger from the new Star Wars movie.
Yeah, that is him. Wow.
I didn't watch Agent Carter. Was it worthwhile?
No,
Oh, thanks.
season 1's pretty good. Season 2's a train wreck.
I tell you what, though, yeah, I mean, that episode was like really creepily impactful. It was like, I think that one was beautifully shot. I think the worst one was the first one in the series ever with the pig.
Yeah,
And, Brent, I was like,
I have a lot of friends who were like, it was awesome. I was
Well,
like,
especially because it was almost prophetic after that.
right? It was so farcical that yeah, but at the same time, you kind of felt that maybe in the air. I love that show so much.
Yep.
It's a really, 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 really good one.
that's why we're recording this podcast reviewing Black Mirror.
Yep. Guess who's getting sponsor dollars? Not me. Haha. I should be, but no, man. I'm still in season 4. I just finished the episode that's in black and white with the weird futuristic dogs, android dogs.
Ironhead?
Yeah, Metalhead.
Metalhead.
That one wasn't that good. I was not really
boy,
impressed.
but it
So
was
I loved
scary.
it
Yeah?
for one specific reason. It's a Hitchcock, right?
Yeah.
And like the whole thing is just showcasing them making a Hitchcock, but like set in a futuristic.
Yeah,
sci-fi
because she's
thing.
at the faucet,
Yep.
doing menial things while the dog is
The whole
creeping up the
yeah,
stairs.
it's 100% just them going, look, we can make Hitchcock, which is cool because it feels almost like a movie he would have made if he had access to today's technology.
Yeah.
But it also tropes off of the SETI research stuff of why aren't there people out there?
Yeah.
Why aren't there alien races? Well, maybe because they learned how to be quiet. Because there are these weird metal dogs that roam between the stars and kill anyone who makes
Yeah.
noise.
Makes too much noise. Yeah.
That's,
It's the quote berserker theory of where is everybody out there?
I thought the spoof of the Star Trek one,
Yeah.
I thought that was really innovative and really good.
The Star Trek one was good. The worst one was the video game one, I think. The horror video game where he signs up to test the horror video game. I thought that was terrible.
And he's trapped inside like a
I thought
haunted
that
house.
was stupid.
But he got jacked. But he thought he escaped, but he
Yeah,
really
the
didn't
whole
escape.
definition of it.
Well,
That was a bit of a cheesy one.
If I just blacked that out, I
Kind of fun. It was
was that for
sort of
season 4?
reverse.
No,
on
that's
the
season 3, I believe.
Okay, that's why.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
I was trying to just think of season 4.
Well, it's instead of the little boy who fell out of bed and woke up, the little boy fell out of bed and died.
Yeah, that wasn't
a
too
dumb
good.
episode.
Yeah. So it's fun to watch him try. It's some of the best SF I've seen out there.
Very unique, very unique.
Yeah. So
Yeah, they're going to go ahead and keep making money. It's not
Oh,
like,
and
this-
along the
this might
lines of,
only be
have
a
you guys
question
seen
for
A
you.
Quiet Place? Fantastic.
no, I heard it was really
I
good
just
though.
saw that.
seen what?
Yeah.
Super excellent.
Quiet Place.
Yeah.
Excellent movie.
I'm scared enough these days.
It is not. So it's a horror film on the level that
my
Get
wallet.
Out is a horror film.
I
Yeah,
have enough tension in my life. I have an 18-year-old daughter.
it's very, as far as like the horror portions, it's very jump scare, right? It's not like it's conceptually really a movie about family.
But it's very unique.
But ever since Trump was elected, I find my tolerance for thrillers and horror movies has just dropped down.
Yeah, honestly, there's just not really that many good ones out there. I mean,
Yeah, Get Out was a fantastic movie, and this is in the genre of, that weird,
yeah, satirical, maybe.
very good story type of horror piece.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely a horror movie, but it's not really a horror movie at
Yeah,
all.
there are very, very few even jump scares, and
I still need to see Annihilation.
I've not seen that.
I
it
do
was
not
a
recommend
stupid
it.
movie.
It was dumb.
I'm sorry, Kwaku I don't think he had it right. Like, it's a movie that's
I agree.
neat until it's not. I was expecting this, like, surreal. I was like, okay, this is going to make sense. It's like, no, this makes perfect sense. It's just really, really stupid.
Well, yeah, it was. Yeah.
It's by the same director who did
I firmly agree.
Ex Machina, right? Yeah,
I enjoyed that.
that was a good movie.
No,
One of my favorites.
Yeah.
I mean, that was. It was subtle. It didn't hit you over the head with their point. As the way a Marvel movie would, for instance, which I am looking forward to.
Right, yeah.
And
Sometimes
I'm
it's
looking
funny,
forward
candy.
to
Speaking of-
the Infinity War.
Speaking of excellent candy, both Ready Player One and Pacific Rim Uprising, excellent candy. Enjoy.
That's a good way to put it.
I liked the book on Ready Player One. We're actually...
Studio Ghibli. It's been around for a while.
Well,
Yeah.
it's 9:03, gentlemen. We did it.
All right.
Wow. So
Say
that
goodbye.
last one. Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
All five of
Good
you.
night.
All
Night,
five
night,
of you.
night.
That's it.
Thank you guys for coming out once again, man. I really appreciate it.
I find myself.
Gucci gang. Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang. Spread their racks on new chain.
And boom, that's it. There you have it, folks. Another podcast down, and a bunch more, of course, to go. Like I said earlier, I got a bunch in the queue here that I'm going to hop on and start editing and pumping out for you guys to listen to. We have podcasts on everything from the drug trade to Wiccanism, to, of course, what's happening in current events. And we hope that you will go ahead and stick around and enjoy all of them. I'm going to go ahead and keep this one nice and short. This is the Exchanges Podcast, once again, based out of Atlanta, www.theexchangespodcast.com. And you can find us on iTunes, YouTube, Google Play, Stitcher, and soon Spotify. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Holla!
Fuck your airline, fuck your company. Bitch, your breath smell like some cigarettes. I'd rather fuck a bitch from the project. They kick me out the plane off a set. Now a little pump on private jet. Everybody scream for WestJet. Little pump still damn left. 100 on wrist, sipping on tape. Fuck a little bitch, make a pussy wet. 100 on wrist, sipping on tape. Fuck a little bitch, make a pussy wet. Ain't cost more than your rent.